Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. How are you doing?
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, what a warm welcome. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, Adefemi.
And good morning, Rafai. Good to see you too.
Morning, Femi, with your thoughtful gift. Thank you.
Oh, my
Very
friends,
thoughtful.
listen to me. We have to be mindful when we're giving gifts. It's also about what the receiver would appreciate.
Absolutely.
We're trying.
Yes.
All right, so let me tell you about what is happening around the world. Let's begin in India, where a stampede at the world's largest religious gathering taking place in India today has reportedly killed at least 15 people. Multiple casualties are also feared after a barrier broke at a Hindu religious festival. It's called the Mahakumbh Mela in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. That's where it's taking place this time. It's a 6-week festival and is the single biggest milestone on the Hindu religious calendar, and millions of people were expected to be present on Wednesday for a sacred day of ritual bathing at the confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna rivers. Now, Mahakumbh is held every 12 years in India in 4 sacred locations on rotation, depending upon the alignment of planets within the stars. Now, Hindus do believe that the festival is an opportunity for them to wash their sins away and seek spiritual liberation. So it is very unfortunate that it has descended into what we're seeing today, which is bodies being carried, huge crowds, huge stampedes. It's something that we unfortunately have experienced here in Nigeria, and it's now rearing its ugly head in India too. Let's move on now to the United States. Now, what has been the most somewhat chaotic day for the US government since Donald Trump's return to office. A federal judge on Tuesday temporarily blocked a push from President Trump to pause federal funding while his administration conducts an across-the-board review to uproot progressive initiatives. Now, the order caused uncertainty over a crucial financial lifeline, causing panic and confusion among states, schools, and organizations that rely on trillions of dollars from Washington. Now, U.S. District Judge Lauren L. Ali Khan blocked the funding freeze only minutes before it was scheduled to take place, and it does last until Monday afternoon. Another court thereafter hearing is going to be scheduled that morning to consider the issue. Now, delivering her first appearance as White House press secretary, Caroline, I believe it is her first name. Is it Carolina? Miss Levitt. Carolina. Miss Levitt has had this to say. It is the first time she stood in front of journalists at the White House as the press secretary, and this is what she had to say about Trump's federal funding freeze.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear to any Americans who are watching at home who may be a little bit confused about some of the media reporting. This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this. And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken. So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering policy.
Well, Carolina Levitt, that was her first press conference as White House press secretary. She spoke for around 30-40 minutes. And I mean, it's not an easy job. And I do know that while some people commended her, some people did criticize her first performance, said that she, perhaps wasn't the most friendly. But I do think that when we look at the content of what she said, what was very interesting is just the language, the rhetoric being used. One thing that stood out to me when she talked about them trying to stamp out this illegal DEI issue. And we know that huge corporations have already started to implement these policies. The issue that I think that people are now realizing now is that when it comes to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I believe the abbreviation stands for, it doesn't, I think in America, a lot of people think that means black people or people of color or, queer people. But it does actually also include women.
People.
White women are also going to be, negatively impacted by that.
So it's just like you're cutting your nose to spite your face. See, I have never seen a 27-year-old that is this vile, that is this angry. I'm even more shocked for her mental health. I must have to say that. In fact, if it was Trump on the other side, he will call her very livid, levitt. Goodness me. The same job you had the likes of Karine Jean coming from and Jen Psaki, and she's this abusing the hell out of everybody. I don't think that was being assertive. She could have answered the questions in a better way. I think all of this Trump is doing is coming home to roost. You're seeing the judges definitely will block him. There's been fears as regards even Medicaid spending. There's been fears across spending across board. So you are just destroying every ecosystem because you feel you want to slam the Democrats. That's exactly what Trump is doing. Any small thing, you throw the tantrums, you go out with a tariff, you abuse people. And please, I hope the Nigerian authorities will send a plane to America to go and bring our people. Because if you don't do it, Trump might put sheke in their hands and send them with a military cargo, maybe a C-130 back home. I hear our foreign ministry is already looking at that. But go at least get some Nigerians some dignity. Because on the list that they're going to deport, all the papers are carrying over 3,000. Abi I lie? They are already there. So please, let's get evacuation flight. Maybe this time they can go and beg Air Peace, to save us again and ensure we all gather airlines to get us back home. It's a very sad one. Concerning what's happening on the Ganges, yes, the Kumbh Mela is a very popular festival. And this year was particularly different because there was a condensation of celestial bodies, and it was said to be a perfect one, for those of the Hindu faith to be able to pray in the Ganges and everything. It normally happens at about 4 different sites.
Correct, yes.
But it's happening at this particular site. And you've had disasters in the past. I think the 1954 disaster for the Kumbh Mela was worse. But this one, the Indian authorities were saying they were using AI to be able to track people coming in. You had an influx of over 100 million people. Even world celebrities, like Chris Martin and a couple of other people were there. But the problem has always been the logistical interplay. And the logistical interplay has always been a problem, even during COVID. Because I remember then, we took a story about them during COVID, where despite the fact that there was a second wave of COVID, the politicians still insisted that the Kumbh Mela will go ahead because it's a religious festival and they wanted to appeal to their religious base. I think in going forward, my commiserations to the casualties, the life loss, I think they must take more preemptive measures. Obviously, the AI measure they were doing and all the other logistical measure was not working enough. They must be able to put in there and they must be able to stagger it. And also, religious leaders should be careful because it was a key religious leader that made the announcement that this is the perfect night that it coincides. That's why everybody wants to go have a dip in the Ganges at this point in time. I just hope they put in more logistics in place going forward.
Well, for the Ganges, it just shows that when it comes to spirituality, religiosity, people would do anything, literally, and even at the risk of such incidents happening would do this. Before you cited 2021 with the COVID-19 situation, and yes, India had been put on red alert, and they overtook Brazil at the time, coming second as the most hit in terms of the numbers, following the festival. And then in 2013, an incident had also happened at a train station where dozens of people also lost their lives as a result of this festival. But one thing I wanted to point out and realize is that the president, Narendra Modi, or the Prime Minister, had come out to say that a lot of people had encouraged people to come out, en masse for the festival, and said it was a really important part of the calendar. And one would think that, and this is why I talk about culpability and responsibility, that if as leader you encourage people to come, of course that's a big message there. And so you should expect a lot of people to come out for such an occasion. They've been doing this for many years. Absolutely. So you wonder why measures were put in place to ensure the safety and security of the people. We can talk about it back home here. You know what happened in December,
Absolutely.
the unfortunate incidents there, and how we're asking, okay, let there be responsibility. Anyone who was found culpable should face the wrath of the law. I wonder what would then happen to a leader who didn't take responsibility to the extent of his promoting the festival and protecting the people. Right. Unfortunately, about 50 people or more are said to have been there. They're quite silent in the numbers, and hundreds of more people even injured, you know, with regards to that. But would this stop people from coming to the festival next time? I don't think at all. It's the biggest festival in India, religious and otherwise. And then to President Donald Trump, I don't know if it was online or we're off air or on air you had said this, but absolutely, I'm looking at it with his executive orders, not just with the suspending of federal funding, is the fact that these are big claims he made during campaign season. Right. For him, he has taken the step. Whether the judges or the law block it or not, he has scored political points, saying that he's a man of his words. I've been hearing words that he's an action man. I like him because he says what he does. He does what he says. Even if he knows from the beginning that what he's promised is almost impossible or not as clear-cut. So there's a bit of dishonesty there, if you ask me, because when you know that you're not going to be able to deliver, but you make a big show and get people's hopes high, get them roaring and supporting and cheering, there's something not quite right when it comes to integrity and honesty there. But this has been stopped until Monday. It'll be reviewed. Let's see, we'll go ahead despite the fact they will be able to challenge it following this.
Okay, the Kumbh Mela is rooted in Hindu mythology, the conflict between deities and demons over the control of a pitcher that will ensure immortality. And it is celebrated every 12 years, and it's important to Hindus. Now, this year is called Meta Kumbh Mela. Meta means great. And it was the astrologers who said that this particular year, and particularly yesterday, Wednesday, or is it today?
Today. Okay. Well, you know, yesterday into today because they were there at
night time. It's very significant because it is when the moons and the stars will align. The first time that will happen in 144 years. And so by 4 a.m., the people started going towards the river. Now, what is the thing about the Kumbh Mela? It is the place where that spot where three great rivers, the mythological Sasrawati, the Ganges, and the
Ganges,
the Yamuna,
and the
Yamuna, you know, and so they want to dip themselves in it to wash away their sins and to free themselves from the cycle of rebirth. So at 4 a.m., people started rushing. Now, in terms of logistics, the Indian authorities have taken some precautions because they are aware of the history that in 1954, 400 people died, the largest case that they have had. In 2013, 36 persons died in this same northern province of Prayagraj. I think that's what it is called. And so they took precautions. They had a network of surveillance cameras and also of drones linked to a command and control center. And that is what has failed now. So what has happened, to cut the story short, is that they have now suspended, you know, the people dipping themselves into the rivers. Spiritual leaders have intervened to say that the whole of the Ganges River should be, you know, the spot. And that in any case, you know, you still have sports, February 3, February 12, February 26.
Absolutely, because
which is when, you know, the festival, the ritual ends and the festival begins. So the authorities are on top of it. But I noticed that the Times of India is trying to play down the story. Times of India is saying, well, it's just a crowd control incident.
Absolutely.
It's not a very serious incident.
It took a very long time and international media to actually list a death toll. A lot of Indian media didn't actually want to, as you rightfully said, didn't want to mention a death toll.
So the international media is showing that this is a serious problem because this is a ceremony, an event that is going to attract over 400 million people. And because of what the astrologers have said, you have a population that is more than the population of America, of the United States, trying to just go and dip themselves in the river. Are there lessons for the international community? Certainly, about crowd control. Because despite the best efforts of Narendra Modi and the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, you still have this accident. Let me leave that. Now, to the United States, this the judgment that was given by Judge Ali Khan yesterday. Judge Ali Khan says, a few minutes to 5 p.m. Eastern time, when, the decision by President Trump was to take effect, that no, this cannot happen. But that it's a temporary administrative order that will work till Monday afternoon. Yes. However, what are the issues? The coalition of non-profit groups went to court and said President Trump has no powers to just stop federal aid and federal funding, control over the spending of taxpayer money. That is the issue. Now, it's not only that coalition of non-profit groups that have gone to court. You also have 22 attorneys general in democratic states also immediately filing their own suits and saying that President Trump has no unilateral power to control taxpayer money. However, before now, Trump has made it very clear that he thinks that the president of America should be able to cancel any funding that he dislikes. The main thing that Caroline, spelled with K, Levitt has said, is that, look, this will not affect Medicaid, it will not affect food aid, it will not affect American citizens. But the main issue is that the memo by the Office of Budget of Administration and Budget is so unclear, so vague, that the Democrats are saying, look, you are targeting Democrats and you have given, you have exercised powers that we do not expect you should exercise. Beyond that is how it will affect the international community. Because Trump is saying, America first. And this is all about Americans. All of the countries receiving aid from America, he has stopped it. But, however, there's this lack of clarity.
Absolutely.
That has to be resolved. Agreed. We have not seen the end of it yet.
No. Hey. All right. Well, thank you all for your comments and analysis. Let's move on to newspaper headlines across the globe. And we begin here in Nigeria with This Day. And This Day reports President Tinubu and 11 African leaders have signed the Dar es Salaam Declaration for electricity access to 300 million Africans by 2030. Also, the APC says that Atiku's political desperation is responsible for the PDP's tragic disintegration. And meanwhile, Nasir El-Rufai's scathing criticism says that Nigeria has poor leadership today because the cunning and illiterate are our leaders. Now, he says he has no plans to leave the party, but admits that he does not recognize it anymore, which he says it has failed to meet in 2 years. Now, the New Telegraph this morning reports that the chairman of INEC, which is the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has said the electoral body has never received direct funding from the European Union or any other international development partners. Yesterday, the INEC chairman met the new European Union ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Gauthier Mignot, in Abuja, and it was during that meeting that Yakubu clarified that development partners only provide support in areas of retreat, engagement with stakeholders, as well as consultancy and technical support service areas. Moving on to the National Conference on Strengthening Democracy in Nigeria. It was held in Abuja on Monday and Tuesday, and that event informs many of today's newspaper headlines, including the Daily Trust this morning, which leads with how our next general election in 2027 can be credible and acceptable. And among the reported suggestions is the need to address poverty to avoid the so-called meal over vote phenomenon. The Independent this morning leads with the PDP Board of Trustees of the party will today meet over this lingering crisis rocking their party. The national security issue, which is involving Senator Samuel Anyamu and Sunday Ude Okoye, is clearly going to be at the Supreme Court, and it's definitely going to be top of agenda when the Board of Trustees meet later today. And the Punch stays with the telecoms tariff hike. Subscribers head for talks. Since this situation, talks with the NCC are deadlocked, and they are heading towards court to find a solution. Essentially, subscribers want a 10% hike instead of the proposed 50%. Now, to the United Kingdom, the Daily Express has King Charles. He's had to step in to overturn the original naming of a Navy submarine. It was proposed to be called HMS Agincourt to avoid upsetting the French. Now, this name had been approved by the Daily Departed Queen Elizabeth II in 2018, but King Charles has changed the name to HMS Achilles. It's £1.5 billion, and he says that this would be a better decision, doesn't want to upset the French. You know, other papers in the United Kingdom today are definitely, again, looking at Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, and criticism about her again. She is trying her hardest to recoup money, and they're saying that she needs to fix the problem that she has created. And, you know, that's what we're seeing around the world for our papers.
Not a lot of the problem she created, a lot of the problem that even Keir Starmer himself created by not being able to articulate how he was going to block the holes that was going to come about, you know, during the debates. I felt he did terribly during those debates, and I said it here, and I said, in fact, my prediction has come to, I said 6 months down the line, things are going to fall apart because I didn't see real thinking on his part. And if he calls for an election today, he's toast. He will dare not. Maybe probably he will do his 5 years or whatever, 4 years, and afterwards he will call for an election, but he will still be toast anyway, because I don't see the Labour Party coming out of this. As regards Ashinko, yes, because of the Battle of Ashinko, which we know that the British really pride themselves over because they had less troops, they faced the mighty army of the French, and they eviscerated the French in the Battle of Ashinko, and we all know that. As regards INEC talking about the fact that they don't receive, nobody's talking about them receiving direct funding, but what we're also saying is, because I've been to some of those stakeholders forums that the EU does support and all of that, there's no how. Once people put some money to your election process, they have some level of influence. Even if it's stakeholders' engagement and everything that they fund consultancy, they have some level of influence. It's influence. Nobody's saying that they pay for papers or anything. The government has a budget for that. But as regards 2027 election, and I'm going to say something here, I don't think it's going to be different from 2023 elections as regards the shenanigan, the vote rigging, the vote buying, and all things that happen. I'll tell you why. Today we are ready. The National Assembly guys, they're going to resume in February, right? Those things we highlighted after the elections as regards, what's even the role of the BVAS as regards the guideline? Can we take the results of the BVAS and say, okay, this one can be justiciable and all of that? Those things that they have to convert to law, the National Assembly has not done it. Probably when they will come back, they will do all the dance and play and the pantomime around finishing the tax bill. Probably they'll pass it in Q1. Afterwards, they will still do a lot of song and dance and play. Before you know it, we are saying dirty, dirty, dirty December. Then next year comes. And when next year comes, we'll not be able to do anything. So if you don't create those electoral reforms, nothing will happen in 2027. It will just be an all-comers fair.
So this conversation was had at the National Confab on Strengthening Democracy. It's the same conference, by the way, that former Minister El-Rufai had spoken and talked about how he was not willing to leave the APC board, had identified challenges in the APC. So he brought together stakeholders, CSOs, opposition party, the media, and just discussing the role in strengthening democracy on the African continent. And one of the things that they looked at were some of the challenges that we currently face. They identified vote buying, identified weak institutions, electoral malpractice, political party inefficiency, and others. But I think what you said, or what to center on, how do we solve the challenge of vote buying and people selling their votes for a piecemeal? And beyond just eradicating poverty, I think there's also a poverty of the mind. It's not just, there's dignity. To be poor doesn't mean to lose your dignity.
Absolutely.
But there's a way that the narrative has been such that people are looking for the next 500 naira. I don't know whether the stakes have gone higher as a result of inflation, but 1,000 naira cup of rice, not even a bag of rice, and just say, oh, this is our person. Then we need to also deal with ethnicity as well. The challenge of ethnic bias, oh, this is my own person, whether they are qualified or not qualified. And that's why I believe that citizen education and political studies should be included in the curriculum from a very young age, possibly from primary schools, secondary schools, and begin to teach these children the values. I remember when we were younger, we used to have, I think in social studies.
Yeah, I was about to say, we called it PSHE, but they actually, and you make a remarkable point because it's only in secondary school.
Politics and politicking was through those classes. Before it's now become corrupted, and what we see, if you talk to some children, they want to go into politics to make money, even at this moment. So right from a young age, there's that monetization of politics in the minds of the people. So they grow up waiting for their next, or when your relative goes into politics, you're excited, not because there's an opportunity to change or to make a change, but an opportunity to benefit through enriching yourselves with monies, because no one is held culpable. So let's start. If we want to deal with it, it's not just now. It's not the adults who are already old and are set in their ways. Let's begin with the young ones. Let's teach the values and the importance of active citizenship, of politicking right, of choosing leaders and educate the populace better.
Okay, let's cut to the heart of the matter. You brought Daily Express, front page, King Charles III, who had just returned from Poland, visiting Auschwitz on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of people who were kept there and murdered, over 1 million people murdered by the Nazis. And now the king has intervened again with the naming of the HMS Agincourt that was approved by his mother in 2018. I think what we're seeing now from King Charles III is diplomacy at its best. England won the 100 Years' War on 15th October 1815. That's the Battle of Agincourt, and defeating the French army. 14 years later, 1429, the French will win what was called the Siege of Orleans. And, so the British won in 1415, the French won in 1429. What the king is doing is diplomacy. One of the major principles in diplomacy is that you don't offend the sensitivity, the cultures, the mores, the memory of the opponent. Memory being one of the major issues, by the way, in Poland, when the 80th anniversary was held. Yes. So I think it's a good moment for diplomacy. And the king saying, vetoing the government and saying, name it HMS Achilles. Nobody will be offended. Yes. Nobody will remember the war. Achilles looks neutral enough. Yeah, neutral. Finally.
Yes.
Okay, finally. I was just going to talk about this. Talk about 2027 elections.
Yes, go ahead.
Look, since 1999, we have been talking about electoral reform in Nigeria, one after the other. And these electoral reforms, we just discovered that after every major general elections, you still have complications. One of the major outcomes of the 2023 general election is that we still need to reform the electoral process, either in terms of women representation, or in terms of the adoption of technology, or in terms of how the election is generally organized. And I think that it's important that the subject comes out again. This electoral reform that we're talking about, the position of civil society is that this should be done early. The Tinubu administration should not wait till a few weeks, a few months to the election. We saw that under Buhari administration because it was left till it was too late. Buhari said, no, it was too late for us to reform the process. Now, that should not happen this time around. Clearly, the Nigerian electoral system is not perfect. But the big problem is this. One of the lessons civil society has learned over the years is that, look, we keep reforming. About the human beings.
Exactly.
The problem with Nigeria's election are the human beings, the officials, the politicians, and also the ordinary people that participate in the process. Are we going to change Nigerians before we have a transparent, equitable, and fair electoral process? That is the big question.
That is the question.
Well, that's a big question right there, but everyone has a role to play in this, absolutely. Thank you so much, Adefemi. Always great to have you here for the World Brief, our newspaper review.